If you are a serious singer and you want to work with serious singers, you need to have a handful of serious tools to do the job and to capture a great performance. And why would a great mic help you capture a performance? It's not because when you play it back, it sounds 1,000 times better than a cheap mic. It's because what the singer is hearing as they're singing sounds good to them, and that inspires them.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. This episode is sponsored by OWC, Other World Computing, which you can find at OWC.com, your trusted source for memory and speed upgrades, DIY installs, and use Macs for your studio. Let OWC focus on keeping your studio Mac in killer condition so that you can focus on making great music. Why ditch your existing Mac when you can take your studio far into the future with OWC? Learn more at OWC.com and learn how you can supercharge your studio Mac. The speed to create, the capacity to dream. Find out how awesome your Mac can be at OWC. This show is sponsored by Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can go to take your recording, mixing, and mastering to the next level. And you can start right now with my free introduction to mixing course, Mix Master Bundle. This course will show you how to get pro-sounding mixes from your home studio with free and stock plugins in Pro Tools. And the best part is that these mixing techniques will work for you in any DAW, whether you are in Logic, Cubase, PreSonus Studio One, Reaper, or anything you can think of. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now, or look for the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. Hey rock stars, it's your host Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Daniel Tashian, a Grammy-nominated producer, musician, songwriter who started early in his career with a deal at Elektra Records at 19 years old. He grew up in a musical family right here in Nashville, Tennessee. Daniel's father opened for the Beatles at Shea Stadium with his band Barry and the Remains. Great band. Daniel did a record with T-Bone Burnett that he said did not get traction. After his deal ended, Daniel went back to art school to study photography, and soon he was back into music again and starting various musical projects. Some of the things that Daniel's done: he's played guitar on Patty Griffin's album Flaming Red. He had an alt-rock band called The Umbrellas that was influenced by the Soft Boys. Love those guys. He then started a band called the Silver Seas with Jason Lenning, who's also been on the podcast episode 74 in 1999. And their second album did really well in the UK, including a gig on the Jules Holland Show. Daniel signed with Big Yellow Dog Music in September of 2009 and began to write various genres, including country music. He's had cuts by the Eli Young Band, Martina McBride, Billy Currington, Tim McGraw, Charlie Worsham, Josh Turner, Leanne Womack, and others. He's produced for artists such as Casey Musgraves, Tennille Townes, Jesse James Decker, A Girl Named Eddie, Trent Dabbs, Emily West, and Keelan Donovan. He's had several sync placements in TV hit shows and movies, including the film Our Idiot Brother, Pretty Little Liars, Nashville, Rain, and Scorpion, among others. Daniel had his first #1 country song with Hometown Girl by Josh Turner, co-written with Mark Beeson, and he co-produced Casey Musgraves' critically acclaimed and CMA and Grammy-nominated album, Golden Hour. Also co-wrote 7 of the album's 13 songs. Daniel's currently working on a Burt Bacharach Melody Federer project, a children's album, and an upcoming EP from his Skyline Motel band, who will be opening for Casey Musgraves at the Ryman. So please welcome Daniel Tashian, Recording Studio Rockstars. Daniel, are you ready to rock, dude?
I'm ready.
Dude, so awesome to have you here.
It's great to be here.
Last time we were here, we were realizing it's been quite a while.
Yeah, but it feels great to be back, and it's an honor to be here, and the studio's looking great, and just makes me want to come back here and make another record.
You know, the artist that reminded me of one of the last sessions we did was Ryan Humbert.
That's right. I remember Ryan.
Yeah, we just had it's been a decade since we did that record.
Feels like yesterday.
Just a re-release. And that was one of the really fun songs, the tracks that we did on the album. You came in and helped. You played guitar on it, and I can't remember if you helped sort of write a bridge on that too, but I feel like we really worked that song into some magic. It was cool.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the Silver Seas, doing Chateau's Revenge here.
Yeah.
And then we also did an acoustic version of that, I remember, right?
Yeah, we did. We spent some time here in the Toy Box, and I noticed a few new microphones since we were here, and also some interesting looking German things over there.
Yeah, and probably a giant TV screen behind you, too.
Giant TV screen, yeah. But other than that, we're all, it's all coming back to me.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And of course, we've had Jason Lenning on the podcast since then too, and his brother and his dad. And so, I've kind of gone through your bio for an introduction, but give us a little bit more of a brief introduction to who you are. And I know you grew up right here in Nashville, and of course, you grew up in a musical family. So tell us a little bit more about who you are.
Well, thanks for all that. And if anyone's still listening after that long introduction, thanks for hanging out. My earliest memories are my grandmother's piano. She had two pianos, one in the living room, and then she had a music room, and she would give vocal lessons in there. And so my earliest memories about being really almost about as tall to where the keys were about eye level for me, and kind of coming and playing those. And the first things that caught my ear were the same things that caught a lot of children's ears in the 70s, which were, raindrops keep falling on my head, and the Pink Panther music, because there was a cartoon called the Pink Panther around that time. So the Henry Mancini things. So so I tried to figure out that on the black keys, and I also have a memory of my parents' instruments, because they were, they played in bar band. They had a country band, a bar band, and they would play in New York City on the weekends, because we lived in Connecticut. And aren't you from Connecticut too, or was I making that up?
Well, not Connecticut, although I did spend a bunch of time in Connecticut because I went to Kent School for a couple of years.
Okay, that might have been what I remembered.
That was my first, the beginning of my rebel ways. I got kicked out after a couple of years for smoking peanut skins, actually. Yeah.
Oh, that's given me an idea. I was looking for a new idea.
Yeah. There was a book circulating around school called The Anarchist Cookbook.
Okay, and
which seemed like such an innocent, like silly thing to be getting in trouble for having been associated with that. Of course, now if you got kids reading something like that,
it's a little disturbing.
It looks a little disturbing in schools. But no, I grew up.
And Morning Glory too. Seeds was another one. I thought, my grandparents have Morning Glory.
Yeah, flowers. I think banana skins and corn silk too. Yeah. But anyway, so definitely some East Coast. But you spent time up there?
Well, yeah, my parents played in a club in New York City called the City Limits Club, and it was a country bar in Manhattan. And they would take the train in from Westport on a Friday night, and I would stay with my grandparents. And I loved my grandparents, and they would play and come back and get me the next morning. And but I remember their instruments around, and a high string guitar, like an Ovation guitar my mom had, and a electric Telecaster that my dad had, and just kind of running my hands on those. And also records. They had a good old fashioned like a dual turntable, and some nice speakers, and a Dynacomp amp, and a tube amp, and a lot of records were played. And so I was a DJ first, and I wanted to be a DJ because I listened to a lot of radio. And up in that area, if you move the dial just like a little bit, you get another station. I mean, literally, when I was a child, there were maybe 400 stations across that area, from New Jersey to Connecticut to New York, and even, Vermont. And so I wanted to be a DJ, and I would just kind of play records. I set up a little DJ booth in my closet. And
DJ 1970s definition of the term DJ,
like
not a 2010s.
I didn't really make the connection that they weren't making the music. I thought they were sort of making it somehow. I don't know. I just thought they just created it. and there were records that made an impression on me, from Dan Fogelberg's "Longer Than" to Olivia Newton-John's "Have to Believe We Are Magic" to "Don't Bring Me Down" by the Electric Light Orchestra to "I Love a Rainy Night" by the same guy who did "Driving My Life Away." Eddie Rabbitt was a favorite of mine as a child, so and the Pina Colada song by Rupert Holmes. I remember asking my mother, what's red tape? Because he mentioned something about red tape in the song. I was like, what?
I forgot that lyric. I just remember, if you like getting caught in the rain.
Yeah.
Because I had my K-Tel albums back then,
Yeah, K-Tel. So,
the hits.
The first record I bought was an Elton John record called Too Low for Zero. And then I started, I got a 4-track for my 14th birthday. I started on the drums and got a 4-track for my 14th birthday. I started, overdubbing my voice on top of itself. And I really liked that. And I thought, I think I might want to do this. This doesn't seem that hard to kind of, and I'd seen people play the guitar. I never really played it until I was about 13 or 14 because it hurt my fingers. But I'd seen people play it, so I knew how to hold it. And
it's funny you talk about the Ovation, and I remember that was my first steel string guitar, was an Ovation, and it was a piece of crap, right? But there were also
falling down. There was nothing to hold it up.
But also like the original Ovations were really quite nice, right? They were like very coveted guitars, weren't they?
Maybe so. I don't know. But now I'd love to have one. I'd love to have a 12-string. That would be really cool.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
I don't know where you would I could find something like that. I guess maybe eBay, but.
Tell us about the high string again, because I think that's always a cool instrument to share on the podcast.
Well, yeah, I just remember when I was a kid, there was a guitar around that had basically, if you could take the top strings of the 12-string strings and put just the high ones on, that's basically what it's sort of like. And I think that's how they did it in the 70s before there was a designated set. Now I think D'Addario makes a set of strings called the Nashville strings.
Oh, there you go. Nashville tuning or something.
Nashville tuning, and you can just buy them, and it's all the strings you need. But you put that on the guitar, and it just has this, you'll know it when you hear it if you try it. It has a certain sound to it.
It's also a cool way to take a guitar that's sort of on its last legs as a 6-string. If the neck's too high or whatever, you can, you put the high strings on it, and it's a much lower tension. So I think
I didn't know. I guess that makes sense about the tension.
Yeah, I don't know if it really moves the neck around much, but it definitely seems like that's what I did with my Alvarez guitar.
Yeah, Alvarez.
So it gets used for that all the time now.
The one I have the one in my studio that I remember from when I was a child, and it's a Korean Martin copy called an Elger.
Nice.
And I had to put new tuners on it, but other than that, it's the same guitar.
Is that where they get elderberry for your tea there too?
Oh,
nice.
Touche.
Touche. Sorry, dumb jokes. All right. Well, so I also like to ask guests who are coming on the show to share an inspirational quote, something to get us kind of kicked off and excited to hit the studio. Have you got anything you want to share?
Well, I do. Thanks for that. I think people spend a lot. I have 3. One would be about making music, and my grandmother used to make coffee for me when I was in high school, and she would always say, "Here, honey, make it how you like it." And, there would be some sugar and some milk there, and she would always say, "Make it how you like it." And I thought, that's a good quote about making music, I think a lot of people spend time trying to make it how they think someone else would like it, but, it's nice to make something how you like it.
I think that's very wise. I think for sure we spend time worrying about, even if we don't know we're making it, even if we don't know we're trying to make it to copy somebody else, we make something, and then because it doesn't sound like somebody else, we, shoot ourselves down with what we just made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like to get into those areas where there's struggle, because I know you focus on a lot of those, because I've gone through a lot of struggles too. And another inspirational, there's 2 more that I really like. One is about recording, which is import a track that you like the balance of into your session, and then kind of compare it.
So giving yourself a reference track.
Yeah, and just kind of have it alongside there, and then you can see if you like the balances of where the different things are, and then turn yours on and turn that one on. And I wish I'd found that a long time ago. That's been really good.
Well, and so you're talking strictly sort of at the mix stage, or would you, do you ever do that even as part of the production stage?
No. Yeah, just later.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the other one was, I read this thing the other day that said, sometimes it takes a while to sound like yourself.
Right. Yeah,
And
totally.
I think that was a Miles Davis thing. And, I like that because it's a long road for me, and finding my sound has taken a long time. So I think you can get discouraging sometimes, and you feel like So that's an inspirational quote that I liked.
No, I think that's great. And I mean, for me, I'm 51 now, and I'm feeling a strong urge to even make this next year, 2019. Into something where I really focus more on making my own music and finding my voice and everything. And I know there are a lot of rock stars listening that feel that way too,
Yeah.
But there is that discouraging sense of like, wow, here I am standing here with Daniel, who's spent a lifetime trying to find his voice. And, how much time do I need? I'm starting late in the game. Do you have any words of encouragement for those of us who are like, I know it's going to take a long time, but, do I have that much time?
Well, I think it's worthwhile going on that search. And another quote that I really like is, if a search is undertaken, something will be found, and if you set out on that journey of like, I want to find a song that feels really good for me to sing, that's kind of a mid-tempo type of thing, and it's got these elements, maybe it's got I know I want the Casio on there, but I also know I want to hire this cellist to come and play over that. And whatever it is that is bothering you that you want to try to do, if you go off and search for something, you're going to come up with something, and it may not be exactly what you were looking for, but it's worthwhile. And, the other thing I would say is that, I can't remember what question it was.
Well, it's funny. You used an interesting term. You said if something's bothering you, and I love that. It's like, there is that element of creativity and of songwriting that you can be, you're kind of bothered by this vision for this thing you want to do.
I know what it was. That reminded me. We went to see Burt Bacharach at the Skirmerhorn, and he did something, and my friend Josh and I went, and we were leaving the show, and I said to him, I'm so jealous of those chord changes, and he said, yeah, until you know why. And it was all of a sudden this light bulb came on that you could actually figure out what you were jealous of and then incorporate that into whatever the next thing you were doing was going to be, and then you wouldn't feel that feeling anymore.
That's interesting. So what were some of the things that you when you explored that, or some of the realizations you came to?
There were uneven bars, or a section not just kind of lasting 4 bars, or there were dissonant moments of angular dissonant chord interactions that I wonder if they took a lot of bravery to do, but they just sound very natural and in a way that I had never used in my songs. And there were scalar melodies that sound both familiar and unexpected at the same time. And so I made a huge list of all the things I was jealous of, and I'm not there yet on that level. But
what's what you say a scalar melody?
A melody that's on a scale.
Okay, all right.
Da, 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 da,
Yeah.
da.
Just real straightforward.
And maybe maybe it's a really simple major scale, but because of what's happening underneath it, it sounds unusual, or.
I know you're working on Burt Bacharach project now. Do you want to? Do you feel like talking a little bit about who he is and what you've learned about him?
Well, I don't need to talk about who he is. I mean, everybody knows who he is, or reasonable people know who he is. Probably unreasonable people don't know who he is.
Share with us anything you learned about him for the unreasonable.
Well, he loves Aretha. He loved her and also Dion, and considered them to be incredible musicians, even though he came from a very schooled background and could write orchestration. He considered them completely on par with him in terms of their musicianship and their abilities, and was not an elitist. I don't think is not an elitist about music, and still works every day. I talked to him a couple of days ago. He was heading to Aspen for Christmas and said, I'd also like to thank Melody Federer for introducing me to him.
Oh yeah.
And but he said, I'm taking some music paper. I've got my music paper packed up. He's like 90. He's like going off to vacation in Colorado with
awesome.
some music paper in his bag in case inspiration hits him.
That's cool. Yeah, I've never learned how to write music on music paper, but I always thought that would probably be a pretty cool thing. And I remember reading
that'd be amazing.
Frank Zappa's biography, and he talked about, coming up with ideas on the airplane and just writing.
He said you always need to have something handy, even a cocktail napkin. I think he's written some things on those.
Yeah, for me, it's the voice recorder on my phone. It's just like put that idea onto that, whatever it is.
I don't know if he knows how to use that thing. He may
not need it.
He may not.
I remember hearing Jack White once talk about his song ideas, and I think he was asked if he records the ideas, and he said, "Nah, not really." He said, "Usually, if a song's good enough, it just keeps coming back to me." I thought that was kind of interesting too.
That's comforting. I think it's incorrect though.
Yeah, so let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
I'm just kidding. I'm just trying to be contrary.
So that's good, man. I think contrary is an important part of writing songs too, probably.
Maybe.
How many of your songs are contrarian? Where do you feel like that ever comes into it?
I don't know. I always feel like anytime anyone zigs, I want to zag. But a lot of times my zag just sounds like a zig from the 70s or, you know what I mean?
I feel a lyric coming on right there. I see the structure of a song.
Who would have ever thought, for instance, that the Carpenters could sound radical?
Right.
But I think because it was sort of elevator music and designed like really not to tear the fabric in any way and not to offend, and now to do something like that is very unusual.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I don't know about it. I just know that I definitely feel in opposition to the times in a lot of ways. And I feel like I don't think I ever want to lose that, but I always feel like whatever the current thing is that everyone's doing, for better or for worse, I just want to do something else. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's sort of a goofy image, but that Corona commercial that pops into my head where, everything's so loud in your face. And then all of a sudden it's the opposite. It's just like
quiet,
nothing happening at all. And that stands out. But I think that's a cool approach. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I'm certainly looking for my own voice.
I've tried the other approach, and I haven't found that to work for me. So
the other approach meaning like you're trying to go with what the flow is?
Yeah, just kind of analyze what's happening on the charts and sort of kind of, take a piece from this and that and try to sort of kind of go along with the rest of the herd. And it always sort of wastes my time when I do that.
Yeah. Well, so you recently have had some great success, Grammy nomination with Casey Musgraves. Can you tell us a little bit of the story behind that project? And, you wrote 7 out of the 13 songs or co-wrote those?
We started, Ian Fitchuk, our co-producer, along with Casey, suggested that we might enjoy writing something together. And he suggested that to Casey, and she was in a open-minded place in her life where she was kind of looking for some new sounds and thought, well, I'll try that. And the first day we got together, we just had an instant kind of rapport, the three of us, that ideas were coming, and she had a good amount of time to think about what kind of things were on her mind and what she wanted to talk about and sing about. And so the first day went really well, but I mean, there really wasn't any guarantees. And so we wrote a handful more things and we started to sort of hone in on a sound. But then simultaneously, as that was happening, my father-in-law started working with Sheryl Crow in a kind of real estate capacity about projects with her in that way, and he relayed a message to me from her, which was a very kind thing that she said. But what she said was, if Daniel wants to, because she had heard about me, if he wants to come and try any experiments in my studio, he's welcome. And that's so great. I thought, well, I told Ian, I said, hey, let's go over there with some of these Casey songs that we had been fooling around with in my shed. And so we went over there, and the studio it's in this beautiful barn.
Yeah.
And down below are these stalls with these horses in them. And there's this woman, I think her name's Charlotte, who sort of is the horse whisperer down there. And, Casey is really into horses. And so we had this really magical couple days. I think we just went for a weekend and cut a couple songs of our demos that we had already written, songs we'd written, and then the horses were sort of underneath, and she could kind of go down there, and then at one point during the thing, we just hit the playback and just listened. And it sounded so fantastic. I mean, she has an incredible collection of gear up there that she's been collecting since, she started, so.
So Michael Cronin has been on the podcast too, and he designed the studio. So that was one of the things he was
so it has,
about
and it has a very analog sound to it. And she has I think it's an API console that she bought.
How would you describe what the space looks like, the textures, the surfaces, and how it felt?
Kind of like this, but it's sort of long and like in the top of a barn. Imagine like being in the top of a barn. It has
a lot of open space,
barn shape to it. Yeah. And the ceilings aren't terribly high, but
one big room. You're in the control room.
There's a couple rooms. There's like a drum room, but it isn't. It's sort of longer than really anything else. Right. It's kind of a long room, but all her guitars are lined across the wall, and you can, I remember one time I thought, it would be nice to play a deluxe on this, and this guy that works with her said, would you like a 57, a 63, or a 64, or something. Like he went through this list, and it was kind of ridiculous, but
that's sort of funny. I remember you as having a deluxe when we were here, I think.
I still do. But we hit play and listened back to what we were doing out there, and I could see she looked at us, she looked at me and Ian, and she said, "We're doing this. This is what we're doing."
That's great.
And luckily she's one of those artists that doesn't really play the kind of game of the Nashville. It's funny. This friend of mine said the Nashville oil slick. She's not stuck in the oil slick of having to really toe too many lines. She can kind of do what she wants, and so it was really beautiful to be able to make something the way we would like it without really anyone kind of intervening.
I think I don't know what more there is to comment on that, but I picture her as coming from an artist role where the decision to let's do this, we're gonna do this. What do you think? What do you imagine that's like? I mean, that must be empowering in terms of being able to say, like, I dig this. This can be my next sound, worth pursuing. But it could also probably be pretty scary. I mean, it's like there's potentially a lot of pressure. Do you have any comments you want to make on that kind of just the thinking that goes into that, or the trust in your gut and all those sorts of things?
Yeah, I think she does trust her instincts, and I think they're right on, and I didn't sense a ton of fear about it.
So I was just asking you about your thoughts on the trust and, what it feels like to be an artist making a decision like that about how to move forward. Well,
vision is a beautiful thing, and it can be. I don't think it's rare, but I think that the bravery to trust it can be kind of drowned out in certain situations by the noise of the industry. But I think if you really get down to it, most artists do have a certain amount of vision, but they get sort of kind of confused and sort of drawn off course by the lure of something else. And so
there's always a million other turns you can be taking.
And so, I think that she's one of those people that has a vision and does trust it and kind of knows how she feels about things. It's funny. We started calling her the Axe Man, because we would play, some parts, and she would come in and listen to it and say, yeah, turn that off, turn that off. And she kept sort of whittling away at all the things that we were trying to sort of trump it up with, and so, Axeman, the nickname was born.
Nice. But, so let's talk a little bit about things that were happening at that point where, you felt like the decision was made that this is working. Do you think that they were decisions about like, this is the right vibe, the music feels right? Had you guys been digging deep into lyric content and things like that? Did it have a lot to do with the story and the message of the record at that point yet?
Well, that kind of evolved along the way, but we had a group of songs that we liked, and we really weren't. I don't think I was trying to do anything astonishing, or I was just trying to be as helpful to her as I could, and coming from a fan perspective. I mean, I remember watching her perform on the Cayamo boat. It's like an Americana music boat thing, and watching her perform and just thinking, what an amazing singer. I'd love to do something with her, but I really didn't have any idea of how I would do that. Or, it certainly wasn't a situation where I suppose I could have come up to her and say, let's write a song sometime. But, I don't know how much that means to someone who probably is told that all the time.
Yeah, indeed. The music cruise thing, that's such a cool thing. Mm-hmm. That seems like something that sort of existed in my understanding in the past, decade or 15 years or something like that. It seems like I kept hearing about these cool music cruises. Was that always happening? I mean, did those exist in the 90s or something?
I'm not qualified to speak on that.
Well, I just think it's cool that they exist. I love it.
Yeah.
One day we'll do a Recording Studio Rockstars cruise. I got a vision for that,
Yeah.
All right. So let's see what else I want to talk about. Maybe can you talk a little bit about the process of co-writing with people in general, and just, are there some things that seem to happen repeatedly as part of the flow of getting together and writing with people?
I think that, we could get together and we could, if someone set a timer for us, you and I, we could create, and they said, you got to have a verse, a chorus, and a bridge, and you got to have a second verse, and you have 45 minutes to do it. We could come up with something, and if we had, maybe slept well last night, we could probably come up with something pretty catchy, maybe, and then, lyrics might not be that great, or, and if we really were like, just really had plenty of coffee, maybe we could come up with something that was catchy and memorable and, good. But I don't know that we would necessarily come up with something that was really like custom and sort of autobiographical, maybe for you, or really personal, unless we sort of were in a really unusual mood where we were able to kind of go straight to that place of like. So I guess what I'm saying is sometimes it's a little bit of a mining thing in order to, if you really, and I think the things that I'm most successful with are the things that are real personal and real kind of deluxe and sort of custom for an artist, and they really say something that is on that artist's heart, or that is like something that they really are resonating with and feeling about, and that's a little different from just trying to kick a song out the door, that sounds like a hit.
Right.
And so I think that my best advice would be, if you want to do that stuff, is to really like talk to that artist and really like kind of get a sense from them of interview them in a way and get a sense of like where they are in their journey, and then start to think about things that sort of mirror the place they're at, and then try to come up with sort of like a bumper stickery kind of small version way of saying that, and then maybe that could be something that could be expanded out into a song.
Is there room for clever?
I mean, I always want to be clever if I can. I never want to not be, but
does that ever feel? I know for me, my dumb jokes on the podcast can feel like clever gets in the way, but I
don't know. I mean, I think if you're making a funny song and you want to make a funny song, that's great. I mean, I think there's moments of great humor in John Prine's music, but it's also very moving. Yeah. So it's,
is he somebody that you've worked with and written?
No, I just admire John Prine's writing. I think he's a national treasure, but, and I know Casey does too, But yeah, I don't know. Clever. I think clever. Sometimes if you're looking at it like a sitcom writer, or you're like, we're going to really kind of push the buttons here and make them laugh here, or that can draw you away a little bit from maybe the sincerity side of whatever it is you're trying to do.
You can start to put up walls and shut down
Yeah, a little bit. I think if you're too crafty, maybe it can the result can still be good, I think, but I think it can draw you away a little bit from what you really want to say, because I don't know. That's just my instinct. I could be wrong.
I think it was the Tennille Townes track that you shared, which Rockstar, as a reminder, I've got a bunch of Daniel's work in a YouTube playlist for you, which you can find right in the blog post or in the show notes. Just click through. But that one had some really insightful stuff. So that song was about seeing somebody who was homeless on the side of the
I didn't write
road.
that, but I produced that.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we're just talking about that kind of song too.
A story song.
Yeah, a story song, and it's but it's also one that seeks to be personal and insightful, yet at the same time it's sort of third person, because it's seeing something and then telling a story about somebody else. And Jill Sobule is somebody that I've known for a long time, working with her through Brad Jones and Robin Eaton. And I remember being struck by how she and Robin would get together and write these. They're very third person songs, and many of them are clever and funny as well. But it's that ability to tell a story about somebody else. What about for you, man? When you're writing, how often do you feel like this is a story about you, a personal story, or a story about somebody else, or are they not separate things?
I think it's a case by case basis. I think you have to sort of you got to kind of read the room, right? I don't think I really don't think my sweet spot is story songs. I think there are stories within some things that I've been involved in, but I don't know as if I would say that's my greatest strength. I don't know. I'm more of a just kind of a feeling type of person. But I wish I was better at that. I'd love to be. I think I really admire those story kind of songs. I've written a handful. There's one called Billy and the True Soul Rebels about. It was sort of based on a band that used to play around here called Be Your Own Pet. It was kind of loosely based around that. And then there's one called High Time that after I saw that wonderful movie with George Clooney where he was the Million Mile, I think it was called Up in the Air. I sort of was inspired to write a story song about that. And then another one, I get ideas from movies. Another one, 5 Easy Pieces, the Jack Nicholson thing. I wrote a song called Greyhounds Forever.
Okay, cool.
Based on that movie. But, nowadays, I don't do as many story songs as I probably should. But I do think what you're focusing on and what you have hit on is the word story. And that is a really crucial thing because everyone is living a story of some kind or another. And if you can figure out what the story is of what they're doing, then you can weave that in. Like here, we've got these beautiful paintings that your mother has painted on the wall, and it's like a gallery in there. And this is obviously like a big influence for you. And so I would look to those for inspiration if we were going to make a song is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? That's
one of the reasons I wanted to have them up there. And I don't think you went upstairs, but all the nudes are upstairs hanging from the ceiling too.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that song is yet, but
yeah.
I like the idea that you can be in a place and look around and compose story from just your immediate surroundings.
And it may not be and he went to the store and then he, it may not be that sense of a story, but a story that, kind of, maybe it talks about this kind of a emotional state or something like that someone's in.
Yeah. It's like a moment, an emotional moment.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe it's not just a literal story, although I like those, but
why the smile? Why, what are they, what is that person looking at?
Yeah.
kind of thing, you know?
I do think there's mining to do with co-writing. And I think now someone has to be the artist kind of in the room. I think if you've got 3 people, I think someone's got to say, okay, I'm going to be the artist today, and we're going to write something, and I need this kind of thing. And sometimes it's a needs-based situation.
Right.
As needed.
You're working
basis.
On an album and
and I always ask, like, what don't you have? And I love to write kind of late in the process with artists after they've got 6 or 7 things they like, and what are you missing? And then they can say, well, I really wish I had something that feels like ballroom blitz, because I don't have anything that's a glam rock thing.
Right.
And then we have a place to start. And I feel like I've got a mission, because I want to get on this record and I want to give them something they don't already have, So I definitely give myself a leg up by asking a lot of questions.
Yeah.
What are you missing? Well, the answer's, we're missing a power ballad. This girl told me the other day, or we don't have any, disco things, or I don't know,
How often are you co-writing with people?
Maybe 3 to 4 times a week, maybe 3 times a week.
Often the same people, or
look,
a variety of people?
I crash and burn with this stuff. Literally, I strike out a lot. I definitely think that you kind of have to get used to, maybe if you have really good averages, maybe hitting it out of the park 1 out of 10.
Right.
And that's kind of like not that, that's not a very good number, but that seems to be what mine is.
So maybe part of the message there is get used to striking out. It's okay.
Yeah, I think so. And I think you do sort of improve those averages over time, and maybe you write a little bit less. Maybe in the next few years I'll write, 2 days a week.
Can you remember any times where you co-write with somebody and they were requesting something and you were very, like, you went for something that you didn't think you could do and it really surprised you?
Yeah, that's a nice feeling. Surprising yourself. And I think it can happen. I think it can happen often because, of that, if a search is undertaken, something will be found thing. I think if you start to look around in areas that you don't normally go, the little back part of the bay where, you don't know if there's any fish back there, you might not get one, but you might find something that you like, and you might find something that's unusual. And, that's a good feeling. Yeah. Finding an area where you don't feel like is a strength, and then you say, oh yeah, I just wrote a pretty decent story song, That's a good feeling.
Country Life.
Okay.
Great track of yours. Tell us the story behind that one.
Well, I grew up with the great sitcoms of the 70s and 80s, from Three's Company to the Gilligan's Island thing and they always had this like catchy little song at the beginning of the show that would kind of tell you the story of what you're about to watch. So if you were coming in the middle of the season and you didn't know the setup, you would know the basic premise of whatever was going. Here's a story of a man named Brady.
Yeah.
And you would get the whole gist of what was going on. Or the ship set sail, the Gilligan's thing, for a 3-hour tour. And so I wanted to make something like that would be short, and you could get the whole premise of who the characters were, and it's a guy and a girl, and they're sort of fed up with everybody talking to them and telling them how to live their life, and they just want to get out into the country and see what they can do on their own. And so that song was really written to be a sitcom theme.
Can you not to put you on the spot?
And it was used in a sitcom. I can't remember
was it
which
really?
one. I can't remember which one, but
that was great. Can I put you on the spot and share a few of the lyrics from that?
Yeah. Her mama thinks I'm made out of money. Her daddy thinks we need more time. Her sister's got her own opinion, calling us on the other line. I'm not trying to say they're crazy. I don't want to say they're wrong. I ain't trying to complicate it. I'm just trying to sing my song. So long to the city lights. They want to get out of there. And that was a fun thing to write.
That's great.
Was taking no-dos and staying up all night and smoking cigarettes at that phase of my life. I don't do that anymore.
And I'm listening to this song and I'm like, is Daniel describing his family? Is it like, is this where he's coming from or something? And It's really does a great job of just sort of like setting a scene like that, you know.
Well,
and
thanks
it's got
for that.
the great 70s keyboard kind of hook and vibe. And one of the videos I included in there is you guys doing a live performance.
Oh, good.
It's just so great, you know.
Thanks, man. Yeah, that song's got some energy. It's definitely influenced by the wonderful, you know, the Welcome Back Kotter. Who was the guy who did that? He was in the Love and
Jones,
the
or
Love and
something?
Spoon. He was in the Love and Spoonful, but those Love and Spoonful kind of things, always affected me as a kid. John, can't remember his name right now.
Up-tempo.
A swing, something with a swing to it. See, nothing was swinging at that point in music. It was Matchbox 20, and you know, there was no swing in music.
Well, I think it's encouraging because I think the message you're sharing too is that if you feel a little bit out of sync with what's going on, that's a good place to be, not a bad place to be.
I think that's right, and I think that should be the central point of our episode here.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's make that the kind of if you feel out of step with the times, that's probably good.
All right. What about lyrics? You know, hearing you speak the lyrics like poetry. How often do you consider the lyrics and look at them and read them out of context of the song and melody? How important is that?
I mean, it happens a little bit, but
if not often is the answer, it's not very important, is it?
No, I think it is. You know, I think it probably. Look, I am not doing everything the way that I should be doing it. I think I probably should do that more, but it does happen. Read a line out and say a line.
Do you think Dylan spends a lot of time looking at his lyrics as just written out on paper?
I would imagine he does. Yeah. I would think someone like Leonard Cohen would probably spend more time than Dylan looking at the lyrics because he has a sort of a smaller output of music and spends longer on the songs.
Yeah. Do you have much interest in rap?
I do. I am interested in rap. And I was just listening to some Beastie Boys on the way over here, and it's wonderful. You know, it's really incredible.
I often wonder whether, you know, rap music with so many lyrics and so much rhythmic stuff going on and so many like odd placements of rhyme structure, if that is spends a lot of time looked at on paper, or if it spends more time, you know, just recorded on tape.
Yeah, I don't know.
To bridge or not to bridge?
I mean, we've got another case by case basis thing here. Some things will, you know, I listen to a lot of podcasts and I listen to yours a lot. I've probably listened to a lot of them. I listen to them when I'm doing the dishes and I listen to them when I'm doing various things around. And one I like to listen to besides Recording Studio Rockstars is the SMI podcast. And they had Michael Rhodes on there. And he said, you know, they were saying, how do you come up with a bass line? And he said, well, the song will tell you what it needs. And so I think that's very wise coming from a great session bassist. You know, if you just sort of sit there with it, it'll kind of say, you know, and there are certain songs that say, I don't really need anything else. And there are some that say, yeah, you're bored. That's because I need a bridge or something, you know, or it'll tell you what it needs.
Well, I remember speaking with James Haggerty once about songs and about, you know, groove songs, reggae, funk songs, stuff like that, and why there were so few chords in them typically.
Oh, what did he say?
Well, I thought he had a great insight. It was just that part of the importance of a song that's very groove based is that it's there's a hypnotic aspect to it, and that if you complicate any elements of it, it bumps you out of the hypnosis of it a little bit. So therefore,
if you add a bridge,
3 chords or whatever, or a bridge or whatever takes you to a different place. And maybe you just want to stay in that state of hypnosis. But I mean, even an EDM track is going to, you know, you've got the drop and it takes you to this place and it builds up tension. And yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about the importance of tension in songs and how do you find places for tension and release?
I want to talk about anything you want to talk about. One song I really like recently is a song called Get Lucky, and it was a Nile Rodgers and Daft Punk and Pharrell thing. And the song never hits the one chord, and I love that.
Really? Can you do you feel like you can explain that to us, or can you break it down a little bit?
Okay, so if we had a guitar, we could look at it. But basically, if you're in the key of C, C would be the 1, and then the 2 would be D minor, and the 3 minor would be E minor, and then the 4 would be F, the 5 would be G, and the 6 would be A minor, and the flat 7 would be B flat, and so on. And so you've got a song, and I don't know what key Get Lucky is in, but it never goes to the 1.
Never goes to the C chord.
It never goes to the C chord. And so it maintains this kind of suspended feeling the whole time you're listening to it. It just sounds like you're falling or you're flying. Cool. And I think I love that about that song. And so I think that's a great way to just look at tension. If you want to make tension in your song, just don't go to the 1.
Yeah, it's almost like if you just stay on the 6 minor, 4 and 5.
Yeah, just don't go to that 1. Yeah, and you'll be good.
That's cool. That's fun. All right, well, let's take a break here for a minute, and we'll come back in for the jam session. Rockstars, a reminder that we've got links to what we're talking about here with Daniel Tashian in the show notes, including the YouTube playlist. And while you're on the YouTube channel checking it out, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you can get more videos from us here at Recording Studio Rockstars. And a reminder, too, that if you are wanting to take your mixing to the next level, I've got a free mixing course for you called the Mix Master Bundle. Just go to mixmasterbundle.com, and that link is also in the show notes. Whether you're on your mobile device or on your computer, just click right through. We'll see you guys in just a minute for the jam session. This show is sponsored by Recording Studio Rockstars Academy. Are you ready to take your recording, mixing, and mastering to the next level and make your best record ever? Then visit the Academy to find the course that's right for you. Want to record killer drums in your home studio? Then check out Rockstars of Drums to learn how to record, edit, and mix pro-sounding drums with a professional Nashville session drummer in a Grammy-winning studio. Or if you are ready to start mastering your own records at home, then check out Rockstars of Mastering, where I walk you through exactly how I mastered my own record, Skadoosh, using nothing but plugins in PreSonus Studio One. These techniques would work for you in whichever DAW you are using right now. And if mixing is your focus, then check out my free course, Mix Master Bundle, where I show you how to mix using stock and free plugins in Pro Tools. Plus, you get a look at how I recorded everything in my studio and multi-track downloads to mix in your own studio, and even include in your mixing portfolio if you want. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now, and look for the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. Are you using a Mac in your recording studio? Are you tired of feeling like the studio setup you worked so hard to create is becoming obsolete too quickly? Wouldn't it feel great to have a trusted friend to help you keep your existing Mac and studio setup current and relevant so that you can focus on the thing you love most, which is making great music? Well, now you can rely on OWC, Other World Computing, which you can find at OWC.com, whose mission it is to help you get the most mileage out of your existing Mac. Whether you need to upgrade your RAM, install an SSD drive, add more connectivity, or simply find a great used Mac that's ready to rock, OWC will help take your studio into the future with a vast library of DIY install videos, 24/7 friendly support, and free shipping in the US on most items over $49. Why get frustrated and ditch your existing computer when you can take your studio into the future with OWC? Learn more at OWC.com and find out how awesome your Mac can be at OWC. Hey Rockstars, we're back now for the jam session. My guest today is Daniel Tashian, joining us here at the Toy Box to talk about writing songs, making music, working with great artists and co-writing. So we'll jump back in. You ready to jam?
I'm ready.
Sweet, man. What about vocal mics? Have you found a favorite one for yourself? Have you do you have any thoughts about like choosing good vocal mics? How important is that?
Yeah, I think it is important. And I think it's important to, if you're serious about this stuff, to make an investment in a serious microphone. It's not that you can't, make Sergeant Pepper's with a 57, because I believe humans are capable of incredible things. But I think if you are a serious singer and you want to work with serious singers, you need to have a handful of serious tools to do the job and to get to capture a great performance. And why is that? Why would a great mic help you capture a performance? It's not because when you play it back, it sounds 1,000 times better than a cheap mic. It's because what the singer is hearing as they're singing sounds good to them.
Right.
And that inspires them. And
right. Because you're hearing that back through the headphones.
And that's why you need a good microphone.
So actually, now that I'm saying that out loud, because you're hearing that back through the headphones, do you imagine that if you did a recording with no headphones, we could get away with using any mic we wanted?
Probably. Yeah, you probably could. But then you might not necessarily get as good of a sound as you want.
Right.
But I think something coming back through, like, the relationship of the singer and the microphone and them having fun with it and enjoying the sound of it can inspire them to something that just singing in the room may not give them.
Do you ever write with headphones on, or do the headphones come into the picture long after the song's been written?
I don't typically, but that brings up a good idea, a technique that Joe Pizzapia told me about, which is you put a significant amount of reverb on. If you've already got some music, you put a significant amount of reverb on a microphone, and you just sort of close your eyes and sing whatever you want over the track. And so you can sort of use a microphone as a writing
so like
and reverb.
Exploring
exploring melodies,
and
exploring what could go where. And then you can go back and sort of try to read the tea leaves of whatever you've done. And,
I dig that.
That's one way.
Speaking of tea, I know you don't drink a lot of coffee, you drink tea, and we just made some tea for you here in the studio. Any thoughts you want to share on coffee versus tea and studios that do and don't have both?
No, I don't really need to comment on that. I think everybody can do whatever they want. I will say that I feel like the bad side of my personality seems to come out whenever I have coffee.
Right on. Well, I will say, rock stars, get yourself one of those electric tea kettles. I got one because we had tea drinkers here in the studio, and they're easy. They're easy, and it's easy to have around. All right, well, let's see. Here's a question. I feel like we already started answering this talking about co-writing, but I'll ask it again. How do you know what you want to say in a song?
I think you don't always know, but you just kind of have to, at a certain point, you have to decide, this is what I'm going to say. I mean, I'm really seduced by music and a feeling that some music can give me. And so then I'm looking for a lyric that matches that feeling. A song might feel like somebody who just doesn't want to, just can't really follow the rules. It has a rebellious kind of sound to it. Then I'll look for a lyric
that's rebellious,
that has a little of the energy that the music has to it, to the words. So they match, I don't know if that's the best way to do it. I wish I could say that it was, but I don't know.
I think that's great. And I think that leads me towards wanting to just dig deeper into your writing process. So, what are some of the first things, or what are some of the different ways that you say, like, I'm writing and I'm writing this way, or I'm writing that way today? Are there stages to writing? Is there a stage that just involves, you're capturing the idea on your iPhone memo app or something like that? Mm-hmm. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, totally. It can happen at any time. I mean, we were just down on the beach and I just was almost asleep, and I don't know, you may probably have some experiences like this, and I think a lot of songwriters do, but just a little bit of something starts bothering you and you think, oh, that sounds kind of interesting, but I'm so comfortable and I just want to just go to sleep, but I better get up and make a note of it. And so I got up, and I didn't want to wake up my wife, and so I went into the kitchen and I pulled out my phone and I just started whispering into my phone this little melody, and
the whispered melody,
and whether I find myself in a situation where I'm going to need that or not, I don't know, but I've got it. And then I can go back to sleep because I know that I've captured it. But I think you have to deal with what's bothering you at the moment. You know, it would be one thing to say, well, I want to do a song like London Calling, and that's what I want to do today. But if you actually sit down and pick up the guitar and that's not what's coming out, something else is coming out, then you have to sort of deal with that, you know? And so you have to kind of, it's almost like it's got its own sort of will about it, these kind of things. And they're almost like, it's almost like if you can get out of your own way a little bit, then you can go faster.
Right. So you sit down, like, do you go down to the studio and say, I'm just going to go write, and you don't even know what you're going to write when you're going down there?
Yeah. And I go and I start to make music, and that's how I start out. I've got this wonderful keyboard, and you probably have something similar to this, but if you hold down one note, it sort of plays a beat and plays a bass and a chord. And it's like this Casio sort of.
Like old school.
Yeah. And it'll go dung, 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 dung. And then when you put your hand on the next key, it'll change chords. And then you sort of find a little pattern that you like, and then record a little of that, and then maybe play something else over that, and then sing a little bit over that. So you use the studio as an instrument.
Yeah.
Or sometimes you're just strumming the guitar and that's all you need.
Yeah.
Or the piano and that's all you need. There's a nice sort of a little bit out of tune upright. It's a cheap upright in our living room. And when the kids are building Legos or drawing, coloring, and I like to go over there and plunk around. And sometimes I'll come up with something in there, you know. And basically anytime I sit down in front of an instrument or start working on music, I can come up with something that I like. And it's a matter of bringing it across the finish line.
Now, does that include a lyrical idea, or is that usually just a musical start?
A musical start is what I'm meaning.
Okay, so then what do you do with that? So you, and also how easy is it for you to forget that idea?
I mean, you could forget it. Yeah, but
you'll record it on your iPhone?
You'll record it. Yeah, you could forget it or you could record it. But yeah, the lyrics I think are tougher because they've really, you've got to go on a bit of a search with the lyrics because the music doesn't feel as effort kind of laden as the lyrics do, because the music doesn't really require a ton of effort for me. I don't know why, but maybe it does. I guess it does. I don't know. Yeah, playing. Like if you're going to play a take that's like the take, you know, that requires effort.
Yeah.
But if you're just kind of coming up with a little bit of something that could be a background for something else that you're going to write on, that's not very hard.
Maybe this is the idea that's popping in my head. It seems like it's a lot easier for me to believe in the musical idea that I just sketched more quickly, maybe than to believe in the lyric idea. You know, that might be a little more challenging.
This makes me remember something that I heard about Basquiat, where we were talking about paintings, but he liked to go and surround himself with all kinds of source material when he was painting. So he would have the TV on, and he would have books of, photographs of African masks, and he would have and one thing I really love to do when I'm going to make an album, and I know that I've got to come up with a lot of lyrical content, is I like to go to the library and get like as many books as they'll let you check out. I think it's 10 or 15, and get them, just go all over the library and all different kinds of books. And picture books are great, and books of paintings and books of architecture, and get a bunch of books, and then just sit down on the floor with all those and kind of have them around as I'm sort of strumming, having a little hum and a strum.
Yeah.
And the other thing I like to do is to ask spirits to look over my shoulder, and to ask someone, especially if they're dead. If they're not, it's okay too. But if they're dead, to say, you know, I really, really would like Buddy Holly, if you're not doing anything today up in heaven, and you want to just kind of look over my shoulder a little bit on this, I'm open to that.
That's great, man. I love it.
And so that way you kind of invite those kind of benevolent spirits to participate. Yeah.
Let me ask you to describe some other writers who you've seen or watched do their thing or admired, if you can. And have you seen other people surround themselves with source material in ways that are different than yours that you've recognized as being that?
I don't know. I think that just felt right to me.
Or like other writers, have you seen them do things where you're like, oh, that's cool. I like the way you approach your writing?
Man, the writers that I really kind of look up to are often lyricists, because that's the part of it that seems, like we were saying before, to take the most effort, and the people who really can continually bring in lyrical ideas that don't have any music attached to them are kind of marvels to me.
What does that look like when you describe that? I mean, are you talking about somebody who's like, oh, I got some lyrics written out, but we can just fit it to your song that you're writing right now? That kind of thing?
It's more titles and kind of concepts and ideas. Well, I think it would make a fun song to do a song called, beach pajamas or something. It's often a noun that paints a picture. I like to surround myself with, if I've got to have collaborators, and a lot of times collaborators are what I need, then I want those people around that can
more beach pajamas,
that can have some lyrics. Yeah.
Cool. So you've got this idea. You just captured a musical idea. You recorded it into your phone. Then what? What do you do with that? What does it go? Do you have your own way of organizing things? Do you intentionally come back to stuff? Do you stumble on it later?
Well, I have a folder on my computer, and it's called Idea Bag, and then it'll have the year after that, Idea Bag 2018, and it'll have all the things that are sort of homeless bits of music that don't have anything attached to them. And they'll be all genres, and there'll be all kinds of feels and sounds and whatever, tempos, variety of keys and tempos. And then when I have a co-write and I need, if I might start by looking in that folder and opening something. And it might be an Ableton file or a Logic file or a Pro Tools file. And it might have one section or it might have two sections. And that's try to expand that out into a full song.
So this might be a session that you open up in Ableton. Mm-hmm. And so Ableton Live is one of the tools that you like to use for writing?
I do.
Mm-hmm. Talk to us a bit about that. What are some things that are awesome about it? Like what you open it up and you do what with it?
Well, I like that you can work on it and it doesn't stop playing. So it feels like you're building a wall or something. You're building something, and I like that you can. It has some nice sounds in there, and I like working in there primarily with MIDI. I don't do a lot of audio in there.
Okay, so you're not miking up your guitar amp of so much anymore.
Not yet. I'd like to, but I don't usually use it for audio. And I like that you can move the tempo around a lot and move the key around. And I like that there's some different, it just seems to sound really good coming out of there. I like the drum bus glue thing. It's like a drum bus setting you can put on there. And I like some of the keyboard sounds, and I like that you can make an arrangement fairly quickly. So if you make some clips and they're your A clips, and then you make some clips and they're your B ones and your C ones, then you can just play those. Even with a mouse, I don't even have the little box that people use for it, but you can sketch out an arrangement of a full song very, very quickly with that. And I like that. And then if you want to use any of those things, you just export it out into Logic or Pro Tools, and then you can start to do any audio things you want to do.
Okay. Talk a little bit about your experience with Logic and Pro Tools. What do you use either one for?
I use Logic more than Pro Tools, but Pro Tools is awesome. And I love both of them. I love them all. They're all slightly different colors, and they all sound slightly different, and they all bring out a slightly different thing out of me. Pro Tools things I work on tend to sound very organic because I don't have a lot of third-party MIDI instrument plugins, so I'm not doing a lot of native instruments things and things like that. So it's basically whatever I can put a microphone on and record is what's going to be in Pro Tools for me because
right.
And so it has that sound to it, and it's very easy to use and very intuitive. And Logic is much more like loop oriented because there's that little loop slider on the top that you can loop a section, and it has all those MIDI instruments and every orchestral instrument and sound. And so it's very fun to do things in there where you're kind of making different loops of those things. And it's fine for audio too. You can record audio in there, but the vocal comping is a little weird in there. But
so it's almost like you're describing, it's like Ableton Live is your drum machine.
Yeah.
And Logic is your your sound library, and Pro Tools is your tape machine for recording the real stuff in the end. Interesting. That's a cool way to sort of see the sequence of working with 3 different DAWs.
Yeah, and I think they all have a thing about them. And ultimately, you know, that's going to need to be in Pro Tools usually if you're working, you know, with anyone else.
You have also hosted a live show in town. You used to run 12 on 12th. That was one of the coveted places to go have, you know, hear new writers and be a new writer and try out songs and everything. Can you talk a little bit about what that was, and then tell us, you know, what it was like to create and host a live event like that, and maybe what were some of the things you learned from that process?
Well, I learned that I don't like to be in the position of being a gatekeeper. It's not a role that I feel naturally feels good to me. And by gatekeeper, I mean, you know, yes, you can perform, no, you can't, or, you know, I don't have, and that was ultimately why I stopped doing it. Because, you know, I don't always know what's good. You know, I think I know what I like, but also there were at a certain point, there were so many people that wanted to do it that I couldn't keep up with it all, and I couldn't listen to everything, and
got too popular.
I just got overwhelmed by that. And there were a couple situations where I missed some things that I shouldn't have missed that were really good and should have had on there. And so, but it was fun, and for a while, and you know, it started out of a group of about 5 or 6 people: James DiGirolamo, Miller Powers, Sarah Siskind, you know, Natalie Hemby, and a few other people being around, and we really just wanted a place to play our songs, and then, you know, we figured out that was something that the whole town kind of wanted too, and so, you know, we picked a kind of a offbeat night for Monday night because, you know, we thought, well, everybody's sort of probably a little bit sad that the weekend's over, and they probably want to have a chance to maybe catch up with their friends for a second. And if we do it, you know, so we got a couple things right. And turns out people did want to go out on a Monday night because they were sad the weekend was over, and they liked the extended weekend of you know.
You know, when I was doing the stereo sessions, live performances out of the studio, I also picked Monday because I just thought in the working musicians world, Monday is the one night that doesn't sort of conflict with all the paying gigs and everything else that people have going on.
Yeah. So that's a good one for that. But ultimately, I really, you know, the same reason that I left the great Guilty Pleasures cover band was after 10 years, I felt like I had learned everything that I could learn from those songs. And
yeah, talk about, I mean,
it was time to start getting serious about concentrating on some of my own things.
I guess at least touch on the benefit, if there is one, of so Rockstar's Guilty Pleasures is a group that plays here in Nashville, and you guys did cover songs of 80s hits and singles, but you guys learned a ton of songs.
Yeah, I mean, I think the overarching picture, Lidge, is that when I started out, I started in my bedroom, right? So I had my 4-track, and I was very independent, and I was a lone wolf, and I did everything myself, and I was not a collaborator. And I found collaboration very painful, you know, and then so I think both of those things was a process of opening myself up to collaboration, which turns out to be like a really important thing. And I think that was what was missing from my early 20s. And so I think 12 at 12, I was sort of teaching myself how to collaborate and open my eyes and ears to what other people are doing, and sort of, you know, kind of get out of my little redoubt that I was in.
And the 12 was, you'd have 12 artists in
which
a night
is
or
a
something
stupid
like
number.
It's a lot,
you know,
right?
It's too many. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like I remember the Family Watch used to have maybe, you know, 3 to 5 or something like that on.
But I didn't like the
night.
idea of people being intimidated by me or looking at me as someone who was in some sort of position to judge whether something was worthy of anything or not, because I really was not. I was not a good, you know, personality for that kind of role, you know.
But you see those kind of collective music nights as a valuable thing for musicians and songwriters and all that kind of stuff, though, right? I mean, do you have any advice for the rock stars if they want to, if they need to start something like that in their own town?
Yeah, I think it's a good formula if you don't mind being in the position of sort of having to, keep the whole thing on the rail. If you're the kind of personality that doesn't mind sort of, being in that role, then it's probably good. I think it's I think the business concept of it could be repeated in a community anywhere and work.
Yeah. All right. Well, so let's see. Let's dig into some more questions about writing. What do you think are some of the hardest parts about writing?
I think it's all hard. I mean, as much as I love all this stuff, and I love it a lot, like I love it probably an insane amount, as much as I love all this stuff. And I'm talking, when I say all this stuff, I mean guitars and microphones and songs and records and preamplifiers and equalizers. As much as I love all those things, it's still very difficult to just roll up your sleeves on a Wednesday morning when no one's there to tell you what to do, to get yourself in there and working. It's very hard. And there's a lot of situations where you have to be your own taskmaster. And I think that's hard. Do
you know who Stephen Pressfield is? The War of Art is a book.
Yeah, people are talking about that, which makes me not want to read it. I don't know why.
There you go. Good deal. But I'll share one of the takeaways from that was just this, the importance of having that discipline that you just described, of just going in every day and putting in your time. And it's, it's okay that you go in there and put in your time and don't know what to do and that it might suck. Mm-hmm. It's the putting in the time and being present for those moments when inspiration hits.
I think that's really hard. And I think, from the outside, right, someone might, I remember a couple of times coming in after sort of beating my head against an idea all day long and not really coming up with anything that I liked and sort of feeling demoralized and tired and sort of exhausted. And, somebody, I think it might've been my wife. She was like, why are you so tired? You've just been sort of having fun with your friends all day, or you've just been sort of playing your guitar all day, but it does make you tired.
It really does. Every time I sit down to play guitar, I am amazed at how quickly I'm breaking a sweat and feeling like almost dizzy. I
understand.
Just there's something about the concentration of playing music and really digging in that just uses a lot of you physically and mentally. What about the possibility of writing over the internet? How often do you work with somebody in a through the internet capacity? And if you do, are there some tools that you use that seem to be good for that?
Yeah, I've done a couple songs like that. And I think that it's totally possible, and I think if two people are sort of, like-minded in terms of, the end result or the goal, then, you almost don't even need Skype. You just need to start, whether it's emailing or texting or whatever, back and forth, whatever thing you're working on. And I think it's totally possible.
One of the things that I was disappointed to discover is you can't actually play simultaneously over the internet still. You can't
that
sing a
sort
harmony
of causes
to somebody else.
More headaches than it's worth right now.
Yeah, it does, and things don't line up and stuff. What about when you're, so you're talking about, passing messages back and forth to work on a music. Do you always sort of do an audio message? Do you sometimes send a video? Do you ever find that one of those is more or less useful than the other?
If I have to, I could send a video, but you don't need to send it.
You don't really
need to send it. You don't really need to send a video. I mean, you can just sort of, if we're working on a song and you're in New York and I'm in Nashville and I say, well, I got this part for the bridge, and I play it for you and send it to you and you say, yeah, I like that. Or yeah, one thing you can do if you want to get something done is you make a rule that you always say yes to each other.
Okay.
So if you say, hey, I think we need to slow this down, I say, yes, okay, we'll slow it down. And then later, if an hour, a couple days later, I say, hey, Lidge, I think we need to speed this up a little bit. You have to say yes. So that's the only rule, is you have to say yes. Then you can get there.
I think that's wise and insightful. And I think that my interpretation of that is that it's damaging to say no in the creative process.
Well, yeah, I think it is, unless you have in your back pocket a solution to the problem that you're creating.
Right. Right.
If I say, I'm going to say no, but only because I've got something better in mind, and let me show you
another yes,
and try to persuade you that this is actually a better solution to this problem that we're both facing. Yeah.
But I mean, let's say you and I are writing a song right now. We're bouncing off lyric ideas.
Mm-hmm.
By definition, 9 out of 10 have to be bad, and one of them might be good. Are we like, nah, or that sucks, or that sort of thing? Or is it more like, do you just try stuff? You try everything, and then when you try the good one, it seems to just fit better.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't really answer that, because everybody has a different personality, and something that might really feel hurtful to one person might not bother another one. But I think in general, an air of positivity and an attitude of, enjoyment is always good. Even though you're doing something difficult together, we've got to carry on with the spirit of completion and moving towards that same goal on the horizon that we're both looking at. And so we don't want to be too derogatory about ideas, because you never know. You could be derogatory about someone's idea, and you could just write something else, and then they take that idea somewhere else, and just it's a massive hit, and then you really feel silly then, because you were like, I remember they tried to run that under my nose, and I dismissed it. So I'm not dismissive, and I'm not a snob. I'll write something silly, but I don't really know what else to say about that.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about lyrics though. Do you sometimes feel stuck on a lyric? Do you find that the chorus came to you, a couple of lines of the verse, but now you need another verse, or you need a bridge, and you're like, what do
sometimes,
I do?
but not overly so. I think if you're really stuck, then it's just time to move on, to do something else, or work on a different song for a while, or leave it for a while. Because I don't really like that feeling of just trying to pound something into submission.
Right.
I think things, they'll reveal themselves and what they should be in their own time frame, and it may not be your time frame, but they will reveal themselves, and you just have to kind of wait sometimes. And I would like things to happen quicker sometimes, but I can switch gears and go, well, that's just seems to be like that pot isn't really boiling yet. I want to throw these onions in there, but I can't put them in yet. So I'm going to go over here and work on this
green
dish.
onions.
I want to go over here and work on this dish for a minute. I'm going to go chop something else over here that I can use later for something else. And I don't know. I don't really like to just sit and just kind of, but you can't deny that it's like solving a crossword, and there are going to be moments where you just really have to sit there and focus on it, and surround yourself with a thesaurus and a rhyming dictionary, if it's an app, and whatever your source material that you've got. You're going to have to sit down there and work on it.
What does
you
that
shouldn't
look
be
like?
Discouraged if you're just sitting there strumming and it's just like, well, this song isn't happening. You've got to get the paper out and knuckle down a bit.
Right.
And if you do that for half an hour and you still aren't kind of really hitting on anything you like, you could give it a rest for a minute.
Do you find it's easier to figure out the lyrics with a guitar in your hand, or when you've put the guitar down and now you're just singing these over the top of a recording of your guitar?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't. Everyone's probably different, but for me, I got to put it down for a second and kind of just scribble a bit.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about your studio. Tell us about your home recording space.
Well, I've got a garage, and it just looks like a cinder block garage from the outside, but to me, it's paradise. It's got everything I need in there, and David Gerke helped me soundproof it, and it's just a very simple building that has my computer in there, and there's some stations. So there's an Ableton station, there's a Pro Tools station, and there's a keyboard sort of wall where I've kind of got a mixer and a few different keyboards plugged in. There's a guitar wall where there's amps and pedals and things like that, and there's a lounge kind of area over in one corner where there's a couch and a table and some books and things where you might want to sit and sort of kind of spend some time writing over there. So
that's where the bong lives and the candle wax is dripping off the edges.
Yeah, there was candle wax until last week, and my brother helped me get the candle wax out of there.
But it's what I would describe as and I remember Roger Mutno.
Lounge.
Yeah, first describe this idea to me, the concept of a studio that's a writing room where it's one room, and that's your
that's
control
what it
room,
is. It's
and
one
you're
room.
in there making the music.
That's
and
what it is. It's one room.
And I think that's a good thing to know. Like, for example, when I envisioned a studio, I was already in the mindset of I'm recording other people, so therefore I need a control room that's isolated from the other rooms. But that kind of design makes it a challenge to record yourself. Whereas like if you really do want to work on your own music, you may want a space that's just one room. You just get up out of your chair and walk over to the computer and then walk back to the guitar and stuff.
When you record yourself in here, because you have a control room and a tracking room, do you press record and then run into the other room? Is that how you do it?
Back in the beginning of time, I did. Yeah. But now, you know what the trick is that I use, and one of the rock stars asked me this on a comment on my YouTube video, is I'm using a Mac.
Yeah.
So I have a Mac laptop, and Macs have built-in screen share capability. It's so easy. So you just simply make sure you're on the same Wi-Fi network.
And you take the laptop in there.
You take the laptop, and I'm going to get one of these, uber light MacBook Airs for my next one. Even small. I don't need to do any work on except just be a walk around the studio remote control. And then you're looking at your Pro Tools screen back in the control room.
Beautiful.
Which is pretty cool. But, I think many of our listeners have home studios that are writing rooms where it's, one space and you can do everything in there. And maybe you still need to carry a laptop over to the drum set. But, if you can just reach over and hit your keyboard. I like that you talked about different stations. I think that's important, right? Is you don't want to, when you're in the creative process, do you get pissed off at the technology? Does it get in your way at times?
Not really. I don't.
You're
I
lucky.
mean, you do have to sort of get yourself out of, you're going to engineer and create, you do have to kind of toggle between a sort of a technical minded way of being mindset and a sort of open-minded kind of free form sort of way. And if you can kind of get that switch nice and limbered up, because you have to kind of flip it a lot during the day, but I can pretty much do it now because I can pretty much flip it over here and be like, I got to patch this, or I got to get this mic to come up. And I've got a lot of things pretty much patched in so that there's not a ton of, engineering woes, but you do have to get that switch. That's a hard one. You do have to get that going when you're doing your own stuff.
You've learned how to do too. So you can go to engineer mind and then flip the switch back and go right back to where you were creatively. You
kind of got to do that. And, it would be a great luxury to work with an engineer, but I kind of like keeping that switch pretty nimble.
I like your words, man. Limbered up, nimble.
Yeah.
Good ones. All right. So what do I want to ask you about? What have I not asked you about that you want to talk about your writing process, or about any of the records you've been making recently? Ian Fitchick is an awesome dude. Great creative person to have in the studio.
I had him on a vision board that he was somebody I wanted to be with and work with in my life. And it worked, a vision board.
Tell us about the vision board.
Well, I mean, it's kind of I guess it was a sort of a popular thing when the Secret came out a few years back, and it was like this kind of these people, and it sort of got made fun of a little bit. But basically, I've pretty much found that it works. If you really focus on something, and I printed out a picture of me and Ian, and I put it up there on my vision board because I just like to be around him, and I wanted to do something with him. And here we are. We've done something together. And we do frequently. And so, Yeah, but even things you want, like I really wanted a certain compressor, and so I put that on there. I just drew a picture of it. Or,
nice.
If you want something that you feel like you need to have in order to some sort of tool, a microphone, or you can put those on there. Or also, things like cars, or if you want a car, or and you sort of put it in the back of your mind. But it's weird when you go a few years later and you look at the thing and you realize, wow, I really kind of got some of those things, if not all. You know?
I think that's absolutely true. I think that everything that we accomplish starts with intention.
That's it. Yeah, you said it in a much more succinct and better way. Thank you.
No, but yours was a better story.
So anyway, Ian was on my vision board, and so yeah.
That seems like a good lyric too, man.
He's in my life.
Ian was on my vision board. Oh, the Soft Boys. That
Yeah,
was one of your influences.
Boys. Yeah, sure.
Uncorrected personality traits that seem whimsical. All right, go.
Well, I did meet Robyn Hitchcock, and
he's here in Nashville now.
Yeah, and that was the funny thing about that. And I tried to relay this to him, and it didn't really come across because you feel a little bit nervous. You can't help it when you're standing next to these people have a certain aura about them when you're standing close to them, and you just sort of are thrown off.
He was probably also
bit.
Wearing a really cool shirt, wasn't he?
Yeah, and I shouldn't be intimidated by him. I should not be, and I'm not. If I just get to spend a little time around someone, that wears off. But when you're just kind of trying to make a conversation with one of your heroes, you can just kind of come off a little flat-footed, which I did when I walked up to him and I said, I'm probably one of the only people in Nashville to make an album with two members of the Soft Boys. And, one's Kimberly Rue and one was Andy Metcalf. And he said, well, what were those albums? And I said, it was a British singer-songwriter called Julian Dawson. And he said, yes. And then it was kind of like,
that was the end.
We were just kind of sitting there, and I said, and I thought, well, I better pick the ball up here. And I said, the funny thing is, someone gave me a copy of Queen Elvis, the album by the Robyn and the Egyptians in 1989, and that was the album that made me think I'm going to get out of Nashville as soon as I can, because Robyn Hitchcock is in London, and that's really where I need to be, or Cambridge, I can't remember, because nobody around here would ever do anything like that. And now, Robyn, here you are in the basement, and you're here in Nashville, and I can't make that make sense in my mind because you were the reason why I was going to leave. And now, what are you doing here? And he goes, well, I don't really live here. I don't know. And I said, well, and I was like, I want to, I said, well, it was a great pleasure meeting you. And he goes, and you.
That's great. That's hilarious.
And that was the end. And I don't know if it really was a great pleasure for him meeting me. I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't, but.
I don't know, man. I loved listening to Robyn Hitchcock and the Egyptians and the Soft Boys. But
the point is, it doesn't matter if when you meet your heroes, they're not as warm and fuzzy as you wish they would be, or if they're grumpy, or it doesn't matter.
Yeah, they don't know you.
They don't know them, but they don't owe you a fun interaction. They don't owe you any kindness. They've already given so much to the world in their music and their art, and they don't owe you anything. And it's not a requirement for me for someone to be kind, to me if I meet them. It would of course be preferable, but I can still value their music if they're grumpy.
Well, that's cool, man. I appreciate you sharing that story. That's awesome. To wrap up talking about working with Ian and Casey Musgraves, you guys just got nominated for a Grammy for the Golden Hour.
That's right.
Which is awesome. Do you want to, do you have any stories to share around, sort of how that felt to get that nomination? And was there a moment where you like riding your bike and somebody called you up or something like that?
Yeah. What I would say about that is that, there's so much rejection, in the world of commercial songwriting and producing, that when something goes right or even better than you expect, it's kind of mind blowing. And you're sort of unprepared for that. And, success is a little bit harder to navigate than failure, because really failure is like the same 3-item sort of flow chart, which is, you've got failure up at the top, and then it branches off and to do I still want to do whatever this is that I've just failed at? And to the left is the yes. And then you go back to the drawing board, and to the right is the no, I'm going to do something else because I don't like the way that feels. And so if you go down that other side where you go, yes, I'm still doing this, and it's back to the drawing board, enough times you become really comfortable with that flow chart, and you get rejected or something doesn't work. And then you go that when something does work, you're sort of stunned, and so I would say that golden hour thing has been wildly more appreciated than I could have imagined that it would be. And but that causes more confusion because the flow chart becomes bigger. It creates good things like maybe some money or acknowledgement or other opportunities, but you also have a much more complicated flow chart with things like, do I repeat what I already did on there because that worked? Do I work with my heroes? Do I work with people who want to try to imitate what I did? Do I try to forge a new direction completely, a new kind of music? Do I go to Berlin? Do I, so you've got this way more complicated chart, and you have to be more in tune with your core principles, with your core. It's like when you get wind in your sails a little bit, and that is being nominated for the album of the year is a little bit of wind in your sails. When you get that, you have to kind of hold the rudder a little bit. Yeah, you
hope that your boat's pointed in the right direction.
You got to hold the rudder a little bit harder than you do when which is a great honor and a great luxury. And so this is not a complaint, but it is something I'm noticing that I'm not as attuned to dramatically more successful outcome than I was expecting.
Right. Well, you're becoming your own gatekeeper now too. And, by your own self-admission, gatekeeping kind of sucks a little bit.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
Are you a sailor? You made a sailing reference.
Well,
plus you got your Steve Zissou hat on.
Yeah, I like boats. I like aquatic things. I used to mess around on boats when I was a kid, and I like the metaphors. I like the metaphors because I think navigation is something we all have to wrangle with in our life in so many arenas. And I really was not gifted with like a naturally innate sense of direction. I was thinking about that driving over here. I thought, if I didn't have all these things like GPS and all that stuff, the world would be a very difficult place for me. I'm just sort of like I don't know if it's like a mole or what, but I just don't have that thing. I mean, my wife can look up and she knows where to go just by the stars or whatever it is she's navigating by. I just don't have that. So I need to think about things, and I need time. And, I really, I just have to keep coming back to my core beliefs and my core principles and the thing that got me into doing all this stuff and fooling around with all these things. And I remember you told me one time, you had something going where you had an Ableton thing happening over here, and you said to me, I think I'm doing all this stuff because I like to just kind of hook stuff up. Yeah. And I remember you telling me that, and I remember how much that sounded like something that sounded true about myself. And like a lot of me, I just like to put one sound together with another, or connect two boxes together and see what they do. And I appreciated you saying that because at that point I thought, well, I'm never gonna be like where Lidge is with all this, beautiful equipment and knowledge about all that stuff. And then that sort of gave me permission to kind of like just plug something into something else and see what it sounds like.
Yeah. Well, I used to beat myself up about that because I'd think, again, here I am admitting on the podcast to you and asking you about songwriting because that's the place I would wish I look at you and I'm like, man, how am I going to write songs like Daniel does? And I used to think, well, if I just hook this stuff up and if I set up my studio just so, well, then I'll be able to write songs and do my own music. And it kept happening that I would set it all up and then I wouldn't do anything with it. And then I'd set it all up. And one day I thought, you know what, maybe it's okay to just accept, that I really like hooking shit up and that's okay to do,
Yeah, well, it made sense to me then. And I remember it, 12 years later, So,
funny
I remember you telling me that. And I think, I'm kind of like that.
I want to ask you one more question, digging into your writing process, and then we
Sure.
can go to our wrap-up questions. But, you talked about sketching songs. You've got them, you've captured them on the iPhone. You've gone back to the studio. They go in the Song Bag 2019, I guess, for this coming year. And they're there. What about that? What's the next step where you're composing some lyrics? Do you pull something out of Song Bag and now you recompose it in Ableton and use like the Ableton Live to Pro Tools flow? Or do you just take that sketch and listen and think of song lyrics, when you're in the car or you're out on a walk? Or are there any places like that where you begin to let the lyrics come to life?
I think the lyrics ideas come either if you're reading something and you read something and you see a couple words together that look good, or I think a lot about how it looks. I don't know why, but like I always think about like if you look at the back of a CD, but I guess because we used to go to the record store or Tower Records and flip through CDs, and you would pick it up and you would look at the song titles, and if one of the song titles was like for Esme with Love and Squalor or something like that, you'd be like, dude, what's up with that song? That seems pretty interesting. But if it was like Baby, I Love You, you'd be like, boring. You know what I mean? Like, so I've always wanted my song titles to look cool.
Yeah.
And I write from titles. And I often don't start writing a song until I've got what I think is an interesting looking title.
That's interesting. That's
and
cool.
so then once I have an interesting title, then it's a process of, well, there's so many ways we could write that. And so it's about feeling about what would be the best way to pull that idea off in a way that when the person's listening to it, it's gonna hit them in a way that is the most effective with that title.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then it becomes about like, okay, it's just sort of a puzzle.
I like that. And I certainly have, I like nuggets of words together. I like couplets and phrases, and that will get me excited. And then, now arrives the challenge of, oh shit, I got to write a whole song out of this somehow.
Well, whatever the nugget is, that's probably going to be in the chorus, I would imagine. I mean, unless you're really kind of doing an innovative song structure that most people don't do, which is fine. So then you can start with the chorus with that little bit, and then it has to do with finding something that you find melodically interesting with that little phrase that you like.
Yeah.
And then we can hang the verses around that.
Melody is something that comes to me kind of easily, but I also find that you don't know until you begin physically singing over stuff, and you're like, oh, that doesn't work, or my voice doesn't go there easily, stuff like that too. And so that the melody will present itself to you sometimes.
But it's too hard to sing.
Just the act of actually physically singing the lyrics over the chords begins to inform you how well the melody's working too.
I mean, I don't really know. I don't really know how I do it, and people like, and I think there is a little bit of a subconscious understanding that some words sing better than others, right? Mm-hmm. And some words you're gonna put the emphasis. If you're gonna sing the word garbage, you're gonna put the emphasis on the gar,
right?
Garbage, because if you go garbage, it doesn't sound as good.
Unless you're an indie rock band and it's cool to do that, right?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. Is it cool to? I mean, I don't know. I really don't. I don't know how I do what I do, but it makes me a little nervous to try to explain. But I think I can explain as long as it's tempered with the idea that it's not the only way to do it. And,
right.
It's however you can get it done. I mean, I don't know how Tom York does what he does, but he has a method. and it's repeatable. He can do it over and over again with good results. So I don't know what it is, but he's able to do it.
I could never really understand the lyrics anyway. I mean, maybe in like Fake Plastic Trees, the lyrics are
no, they're there.
They're there, but like, you know, some of the other ones off OK Computer and stuff, and it's more the sound of his voice, but then you'd see the lyrics written out and you're like, he's singing about, you know, chickens from outer space. What? You know, and that was encouraging to me because it reminds me that you don't have to be too caught. I mean, think about It Smells Like Teen Spirit for Nirvana. I mean, nobody knew what they were singing about until they broke it down for us on MTV.
Yeah. I mean, I think you brought up something important that I think we should touch on, and that I think there's two kinds of lyrics. There's working man's lyrics and there's bongwater lyrics. You know, and the working man's lyrics are like, you can understand them.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean they aren't poetic. You know, it's like when Bruce Springsteen says, you know, he's got those wonderful poetic working man's lyrics where you're on a bit of a visual ride, but you still know at the end of the day what the song is about and what it means and what it's talking about. And with the bongwater kind of lyrics, you know, you don't.
Yeah. Billy Joel lyrics are working man lyrics, would you say?
Yeah, and I think the more you fool around with lyrics, the more you realize that the bongwater lyrics are a little bit easier to come by and a little closer at hand.
Right.
And the working man's lyrics are a little bit more, effort goes into them.
Yeah. They can be written, they can exist outside the song more easily too.
Maybe so, yeah. Well, I've done a lot of bongwater songs. I'm saying this, you know, with affection for that. But just the longer you do it, the more you come to really appreciate the things that aren't bongwater.
Yeah. Let's jump into some of the outro jam session questions here.
Okay.
Kind of go through these quickly and wrap up. When you started out in recording and music and songwriting, what do you feel like was holding you back?
The things that held me back are the things that classically hold people back, like being stoned all day as opposed to just occasionally, or you know, your ego telling you that you have to do it all on your own.
Yeah. All right. How about some of the best advice you remember receiving?
Tucker Martine told me that just spending hours and time doing it, the things I've struggled with weren't necessarily writing songs, but capturing on my own something that the end result of it was good enough to release. And he said if you're an analytical person, you can hold a recording that you made today up against one maybe you made a year ago, and you can see improvement if you're working on it and just putting the time in. But
not if you spent all year only working on one song.
True. Yeah, exactly.
That's why you got to get a bunch of the bad ones out of the way. Right?
Yeah. And I think it takes a while to get clarity in the mix where, you know, each thing kind of shines on its own, and to learn to sort of work with those mid-range frequencies in a way that they don't fight with each other. And that just takes practice and time and kind of comparison with other recordings and stuff. But you can get there.
Yeah.
And it feels like kind of one of the hardest mountains to climb, I think, is getting your mixes to sound like the records you love, you know.
You brought up release, the word release, and I feel like I should ask you this. We live in a day and an age where you can have a SoundCloud account. You could record and make lots of music, and you can easily share it with the world. What thoughts do you have about when it's right to share stuff with the world, or whether you should really not be sharing it with the world and make a bigger splash with a full album? Anything you want to share about that?
Well, only thing that comes to mind is you sort of get what you pay for, you know? I mean, like, I think it's in all things, you know, like it just seems to be just one of those rules that just works across everything. It's like the cheap, fast, and good rule. You know, you've heard that, right? You
can have two or three, but not all three.
Yeah, but I mean, it seems to be like, okay, if you make something quickly and release it, like you've done it cheaply and you've done it quickly. Is it as good as you can do? It might not be. You know, I don't know, you know, you got to sort of like weigh, like, and I think the amount, my grandfather used to say the outcome is directly the success of the outcome is directly proportionate to the intensity of the interaction.
Mm-hmm.
So if you really, you got a lot riding on a track, and it's a really important song to you, and it's really important, and you put a lot of effort, and you put everything you've learned into it, and you use every resource you have at your disposal to make it great. You get the most expensive mixing and mastering you can afford, and you just really put everything into it. You probably are going to have a better outcome of success with it than if you just sort of say, well, I'm just going to kind of toss this off. Well, I don't know, Lidge.
No,
that's
right.
the thing. I don't know. I do not know.
What if you're somebody who's, who really hasn't put themselves out yet? And maybe you know that you need to, in order to get better at songwriting, you got to write a lot of songs.
Well, someone did tell me that you can't really learn the lesson of whatever it is if you don't release it.
Right.
Because if you never show anybody your thing that you've mixed and mastered yourself, then you're not going to go hear it on some other system and go, damn, I wish the bass was louder.
Yeah.
Like I did the other day when I was listening to something that I released, or you're not going to learn that stuff if you don't release it, because there has to be a bit of that, pain involved in a real lesson that sticks with you, right?
Well, so as a writer, you've written a lot of songs, you've co-written with a lot of people, so you're writing all the time. Do those just go into folders and not get, and one person hears them? Or is there like a micro exposure that happens in that process that's different from releasing an album?
Yeah, I send them to the co-writers or the artist, if it's an artist, and I send them to my publisher, and that's basically what I do.
And so you get a little bit of that feedback from there.
Sometimes no.
And I guess the other part of my question is, in this day and age of SoundCloud, do you know people who are making music and they share pretty quickly on SoundCloud? So it's almost like this, you're getting a look behind the curtain, but even though they will make a complete album that is much better than that gets an actual release. And do you find that seems to work for people at all?
I think that's pretty exciting, and I like the idea. I can't remember who it was, but it was somebody who was making, beats for Kendrick Lamar on the phone, and he was talking about the output of the phone being hotter than the output of Ableton or something, and how he just likes to make beats on the phone and in GarageBand. And I find those kind of things inspiring. I like to live in an era where there can be a pretty quick and direct conduit between the creation and the audience, and I like that. I like that relationship not being impeded by too many gatekeepers of one kind or another.
Yeah,
and I like that. I think that feels very democratic and very nice to me. But where are the curators, and where are the people who, I think then it becomes a job of, you've got to sort of kind of be your own curator a little bit and find what you only have so much time to listen to music, so you got to have some way of finding things,
Yeah. All right. Let's keep moving forward. So recording tip hack or secret sauce, is there anything that you want to share with the rock stars that they might use in their own, songwriting studio on their next session?
A couple years ago, I did a song, and Jason Lenning, I sent it to him, and he said, sounds great, but you just need a de-esser on the vocals. So I would say that was a good one for me.
All right, cool. I like it.
And then the other one, I got a couple more. The Ozone product by Isotope is pretty cool to sort of.
Is that Neutron, the one that figures out?
No, I've used that one, but this is the one that you sort of put on the master and
Ozone, right? Exactly.
And it kind of makes it sound good.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I like that. And I like that from your perspective, where I might be digging in deeply into all that stuff, but maybe your experience, if I'm hearing you right, was like you put it on there and it's like, wow, that sounds a lot better. And there's a lot of value to that. And I think there's a lot of value in the studio to not getting too caught up in things. It's like just being able to quickly recognize, like, if I use this, it sounds better, done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you do. I mean, best case scenario, you want to involve some mastering, and it's a little bit more complicated. Right. But for my world of turning in songs and kind of getting stuff moved out of my studio and into the world, it's necessary, man. I gotta have that.
All right, a favorite hardware tool or something you're excited about using in the studio?
Man, a couple years ago, I found these pedals, and they're sort of expensive, but you can go a long way with one or two of them. And they're called this company called Chase Bliss, and I developed a bit of a friendship with the guy who's kind of behind it, Joel Cordy. But they make a pedal called Warped Vinyl, and it sounds like a chorus, but it also kind of does this sort of vibrato kind of interruption K-field almost sound to it. And nice. I really like the way that thing sounds.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Dig it. Software tool, something you're excited about using in the studio right now?
I'm exploring the Timeless plugin by FabFilter, and it has like a filter delay type of thing going on with it. And there's some presets in there that I really like, and I like presets.
Presets are great.
Lot. I like them a lot. Yeah.
I like tweaking them too, but it sure is nice to flip through and find something that inspires you. Can you imagine Logic with all those synths and sounds if there were no presets for any of them? Okay, I want to have strings on this, but I'm going to have to learn how to, create a synthesizer that sounds like strings.
That's Pro Tools for me. I mean, that's pretty much what it is.
It's a blank slate.
Just
mostly,
nothing.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
All right. A resource or tip for the business side of doing this stuff. Anything you want to share with people?
I just found this thing this year called the Bullet Journal, and it is mind-blowing. If you just kind of look on YouTube, there's somebody will tell you how to set it up, and you can do it with any notebook, but I've got one here in front of me, and it really does everything from, organizing your thoughts to setting goals for yourself to kind of ratcheting your anxiety down because you're not, carrying all these ideas around in your head. You've got them all sort of in a little book. I
noticed that you have a physical book with you.
That's my bullet journal.
Yeah. And how important is it in this day and age to have physical pen and paper in a book? Do you know people, do most of the songwriters you admire have some physical way of writing stuff down? How often are they just typing it on a phone or just sticking strictly to a digital device?
Pretty often. Yeah. But there are a few I know that want to write with a pen. I'm one of them. I like to write with a pen.
Okay, cool. All right, good. So there's room for all of us.
Yeah.
How about an organizational online resource or a tip for, I guess the bullet journal is that as well.
It really is. And it's amazing. It's an analog thing, but it really beats any app I've ever seen. And it beats any of that stuff. There's a way you have to set it up though. You have to kind of go and watch the tutorials because once you learn the kind of system, it's crazy.
All right. Well, maybe I'll find a YouTube video and throw that in the playlist too, if there's one there.
The bullet journal. Yeah.
Okay. How about, we're going to go to the last question here. This one's hypothetical. But we're going to take the Wayback Studio machine. You're going to go back in time, find young Daniel, and you get a chance to tap yourself on the shoulder and say, yo, dude, I've come back to tell you this. Here's the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of your own studio one day. What advice would you go give yourself?
I would say get into collaboration. And you don't have to do it all yourself. Be aware of how you feel around certain people and what your gut is telling you, if they're good for you or not. And then, keep some kind of log of tasks, or what direction you're going in and where you want to go. And then when you finish them, check them off to make sure you're on, a trajectory that you want to be on. And then I would say invest in gear and real estate.
Nice. Because you got to put your gear somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Awesome, dude. Well, thank you so much for being on Recording Studio Rockstars, dude, with us.
Thanks for having me.
A blast to talk about all this stuff with you. How can the Rockstars find you online, follow you, learn more about you and your music?
Well, I'm occasionally on Instagram at The Silver Seas. Let's see. Meghan Trainor said, work till you, I don't know if it was Meghan Trainor, but somebody said, work till you don't have to introduce yourself.
That's great. And I think at that point too, you also just say, hey, great to see you to everybody you meet, because you never know if you already met them before, right?
Yeah, that guy. There he is. What's he doing? How you doing, that guy?
Yeah. All right, dude. Thanks so much for being on the show with us.
Thanks for having me, Lidge.
And I just look forward to hearing whatever your next record is.
Thank you.
All right, man. Cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. Also, remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with these weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free mixing course at mixmasterbundle.com. Look for the link in the show notes. And if you want more free content from Recording Studio Rockstars, all you have to do is go to rsrockstars.com/email. Again, that's rsrockstars.com/email to enter your name and email, and I'll keep you in the loop with articles, videos, podcast updates, and even free gear giveaways for your studio, all totally free. Thanks for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lidge Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music.